Good morning. Let's start and call to order the May 6th, 2021 meeting of the TPA's Bicycle-Trailways-Pedestrian Advisory Committee pursuant to the TPA Emergency Order 2021-01. The Palm Beach County TPA is conducting this meeting virtually using the Zoom webinar platform. The TPA selected this platform because it does not require the public to purchase or download any additional software or equipment to attend this meeting. Aside from the Zoom webinar platform that the participants will use to attend remotely, the public will have no discernible difference in their ability to watch the meeting from that of someone physically attending the meeting. Instruction to join this virtual meeting, as well as contact information for a TPA staff member to assist you, are provided in the published meeting agenda. Please note that although some members of the BTPAC are attending in person, committee members will be appearing at today's meeting remotely, either via webcam or telephone. Additionally, scheduled presenters and the BTPAC liaison, Alyssa, will be appearing via webcam or telephone. So Margie, will you please call the roll for quorum?
Yes, ma'am. For those present in person, as a reminder, if you can hit the button on the base when the microphone is red, it means you are on and everyone can hear you. For those that are present virtually, if you can please unmute yourselves. And then if you are here on behalf of a representative, please state your name for the record. So Tracy Phelps.
Tracy Phelps here.
The Boca Raton Bicycle Club is still vacant, so they will be marked as absent. Craig Pinder.
Here, I'm here.
Thank you. Ted Goodenough.
Here.
Joanne Peluso.
Here.
Joanne Scaria. Fadi Nassar.
Here.
Sally Channon.
Here.
Michael Howe.
Present.
Jean Matthews.
Here.
Yash Nagal.
Hey, good morning. I'm here.
Michael Owens.
Hello, I'm here.
Ryan Harding.
Here.
Thank you. John Roach.
Here.
Larry Wallace.
Good morning.
Brian Rusher.
Here.
Stephanie Thoburn.
Here.
We have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any modifications to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, so then we're on to minutes. Item C, minutes for the April 8th regular meeting from last month. Are there any changes to the minutes? Anybody have any changes?
I'm sorry. I do have John Roach with his hand raised.
Okay,
Is this for the minutes for the scoring meeting as well, or?
This
just
is for the regular meeting. So we are on 1C.
Okay, all right, sorry.
okay. Any other comments for the regular meeting minutes from last month? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve item 1C.
That was a motion by Brian. Is there a second?
Second, I second Michael Owens.
Michael and Brian. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that passes. And then the second one is the minutes from the April 8th Transportation Alternatives Program, projects, presentations, and ranking meeting. So,
So I have John and Sally with their hands raised.
okay.
Yeah, I just had one suggestion under the roll call. It looks like you use the symbol E or the letter E to represent. I'm assuming that's excused, but you didn't have it in the legend below. So just a suggestion there.
Thank you. We'll correct that. It should be marked as an A as absent.
Okay.
Sally,
My alternate J.C. Beery was present for that meeting and then discussed the results with me afterwards. And I did go back and listen to the full audio for the meeting. And I did not hear where the corrected scores were actually presented to the committee prior to the vote. And they are, those scores are quite different from what was in the handout provided in the agenda backup. And I think that should be changed to correctly reflect what was present at the time the committee voted.
Alyssa, do you?
Sure. So as a reminder, there was an issue with the formula at the time that we did go over. So the scores were presented as higher at the time, but we did go back in the meeting and correct the scores, and they kept the same order. They just were lower. And the updated scoring was provided as or in the backup for today's meeting in the minutes. We can give you guys the older scoring from the wrong formula if you'd like, but this is the corrected scoring. So yeah, that was the only issue.
The minutes are supposed to reflect what actually occurred and not what should have occurred. So the JC said there was nothing on screen, and there's very definitely nothing in the audio that actually provides these numbers. Although there was a very brief discussion saying, well, there's something wrong with the formula that occurred with I think when the last project came up, the Indian Trail Improvement District. They were the last to present and the last discussed. And there was a question about some problem with the formula, but there was not a correction. And I just think that the minutes should be an accurate reflection of what was presented to the committee at the time of the vote. And that would be those incorrect ones.
Okay, so if you guys do make a motion to update the minutes to reflect the incorrect scores, we can do that. We did note in the minutes that there was an issue with the scoring and that was reflected and that the updated scoring was included in there. But like I said, we can go back and revise the minutes to show the incorrect scores if that's the will of the committee.
Why don't we put in another column that shows the scores at the meeting that were shown, and then put in where it says TPA score, put in updated TPA score, maybe put a asterisk or something. That way it's very reflective of what happened as well as the correction. Because at the meeting there, I recall Alyssa making the correction to each individual number, but it wasn't necessarily all added up and put on the screen. But she did redo the calculation and agree that there was an error, mathematical error. Would you agree with that, Sally?
No, actually, I think it should reflect what was actually presented in the meeting. We've received a correction since then, and that can be reflected it should be reflected in this meeting. We're discussing it right now, and we have in front of us those scores. According to JC, those tallies were not. The significance for me is that the city of Boca Raton, which I agree with you all, is really the type of project we should score. It's going to have a lot of benefit in that location in terms of increased ridership and usage. But at 21 points, that's below the guidelines for what the TPA can even give money for. So if you feel it's appropriate, then in this meeting, we can reaffirm, yeah, we knew that when we voted, and we are recommending to the TPA, give this project that falls below your guidelines a number 2 ranking. But I think it's inaccurate it gives the impression that the group knew that was the total at the time the vote was taken. And that, as far as I can tell, that is not correct.
Well, I was at the meeting, and I recall specifically us having the discussion on the calculation and the calculation being revised in terms of individual formulas brought up. Now, not the total. I mean, I'd like to hear from other folks, but I don't see a problem with showing the change, showing the delta.
If that's your recollection, then good, because I wasn't present to see it. JC's attention could have been temporarily diverted and those numbers actually be shown, but it isn't reflected in the audio. So if it's your recollection that it was there, then doing the columns would be just fine.
Well, let's hear from other folks from the committee on this item. Anybody have a problem with modifying and keeping the old numbers that weren't correct, or showing the change and adding a column?
I think this is Brian, just really quickly. I think the minutes accurately reflect what happened in the meeting. I mean, I don't think that adding the original scores would give too much more detail. As long as Alyssa has a file on hand that can accurately reflect what was presented in the meeting. Do you have that file, Alyssa?
Yes, so I do have both files. I have what was presented at the time, and then with also the updated Excel and the updated formulas. So we do have that. Like I said, it is whatever you guys do prefer. And just to touch on, Sally, what you had said, no, we typically don't score projects that rank under 21 points. But again, we did have a couple projects withdrawn this year. So we actually did have enough funding to cover most of all of the projects. So because of that, we are able to provide funding for all of them. So.
My question with the Boca Raton project, one of the reasons we really liked the Boca Raton project was we felt like it had increased capacity, because lighting, you got like a third more, it was 33% more. In the revised scoring, is that taken into consideration?
So the revised scoring, it just follows the formula. It just follows the formula. It's whatever the formula populates based on the addition of how it scored throughout the Excel spreadsheet. But you guys did, it was based on conversation, how it was ranked. So that was what you guys decided as a committee.
I'd like to see 2 columns. I think that would be reflective. And also, I think we need to make a motion later in the meeting to do 2 things. One, accept projects that score under the minimum as being valid this cycle, and 2, to recommend that the committee's rankings should take precedence as presented to the full board.
Are you making a motion?
Yeah, motion to add a second column, approve the minutes with addition of second column with an asterisk saying that the formulas were discussed in the scoring was changed.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it. That's fine.
Thanks, Brian. Can we, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so everyone agrees, yay. Okay, so then the next item is the general public comments and public comments on the agenda items. So let me summarize our public comment procedure for this virtual meeting. Written comments may be submitted online at the website provided in the agenda. Verbal comments may be made by a virtual attendee by using the raise hand feature in the Zoom platform. Lastly, a verbal and/or written comment may be provided by an in-person attendee submitting a comment card available at the welcome table in the back. So staff, are there any general comments that we received?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, so then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is comments from the board and the chair. I just want to first welcome Tracy Phelps and Kimberly Is Kimberly on?
I'm sorry. No, it's just Tracy is on that I can see.
Okay, I don't want to, I want to make sure I pronounce her name properly. Kimberly Kosarog.
Oh, I'm sorry. She is on.
Okay, Kimberly and Tracy, welcome to our meeting. I hope to meet you in person soon. And they're the newest appointments for the city of Boca Raton on the BT PAC. If you, Tracy and Kimberly, if you want to say, tell us how you say your names. Tracy Phelps, that's easy. Tracy and Kimberly, can you hear me? Okay,
Muted. Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. Okay, now can you hear me?
okay, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you're pronouncing my name right, Tracy Phelps. I'm excited and to be a part of the committee.
Okay. And also Kimberly, are you there? Okay, well, let's just, one other item, I just was wondering, are we getting a new Boca Raton Bicycle Club participant committee member?
I'll field that question since Alyssa's having issues right now. We did send them a letter notifying them that they do have a vacancy and they either need to appoint somebody or they would be asked to be removed. They have since sent an appointment letter, so we are including it on our May 20th, if I remember that. Yes, our May 20th agenda. So they
Okay.
should be active for the June BT PAC meeting.
Okay, so we'll see a new Boca Raton committee member at the next meeting. Excellent.
Yes.
Does anyone else have any comments? Sally?
Okay, I wasn't present for the TA meeting. JC Beery was here. I did go through and listen to the entire audio. And I just wanted to say that it was, I was very happy to hear it and hear all the comments. I thought that it functioned, the committee functioned really the way we're supposed to be, which is an advisory committee. And there was a lot of good input based on people's experience. And I just want to, I know that this has come up many times in the past about this idea of this objective scoring versus the committee doing subjective. And I mean, I think that's our role, is to be subjective. We're here as advisors, not computer bots. And that's what we're bringing to the TPA is our collective experiences and input. And I just felt that the Boca Raton project was a really good example. It was kind of obvious, I think, to everybody on the committee, and several people spoke and brought out why this is the obvious type of project we should fund. And it just bombed on the scoring sheet.
Would now be the time for a motion to take and say we approve our rankings and we want them to go? Would now be the time for a motion to say we want to approve the rankings and as we have them presented as the priority of the committee to be full board, or is that later in the meeting?
And if you, two things I was going to say. One, if you can turn your microphone on. And the second thing, that item was discussed at the previous meeting, your TA meeting. So that was your motion to move that forward. And the minutes did reflect that your ranking would be provided to the governing board during that project cycle. So though that has already been done.
Okay, I just want the full board to know that we feel strongly that our ranking should take precedent.
And
They receive our minutes, don't they?
So
they
they
don't receive your minutes.
Oh,
No.
okay.
No, but when we bring it to them, we bring it to them in the order that you guys propose and approve.
Alyssa,
So,
that's wonderful. Thank
yes.
you.
So then the question is really, because at the very end, the minute said that we ranked them because we believe that because of the median income of college students, that was higher, the usability, the length of time in which that area. does that get included with the ranking as well? Like why we made that determination? Because I think that's a very valid point of why we made that recommendation.
So the way that the governing board receives it is in the table with the ranked order that is provided. So the table that was provided, I believe it's the one that was in the backup, will be provided to them. So they see how it was scored, and then they see, they see how it was scored, and then they see, got distracted, the ranking by you guys. And then we also bring them, bring the list of priority projects to you in July, and you'll see how they're ranked before they go to the board. And you'll see how it's laid out before it goes to the board.
Sally?
Could, I mean, if you wanted to, it seems like we could send a letter and ask that the letter be included in the agenda, the backup that's provided to the TPA. They're not going, I think they don't look at this until July. Is that correct from the calendar? So there's a lot of time between now and when I think they have to figure out if those projects are actually going to go forward, because there's a whole bunch of stuff going on right now with the local governments that propose them. And then it is July before they see it. So we could always draft a letter and explain, you know, here's we rank number 2, something that quite frankly has less points than anything on there. And in a more normal year would appear to have fallen out, but it's not a fault of the project.
Alyssa, is there a way to incorporate that, the table as well as our comments, so that they understand why? So we just have is this letter or another way, a good way to incorporate how we ranked them?
So if there is a letter, or if that's something you would like to do, we can always share it with the governing board. But we just, okay. Nick's gonna come speak.
So, Madam Chair, if I could just kind of give some context to this conversation. The BTPAC met and reviewed the 4 submitted applications and said, we want to fully fund the top 3 pursuant to the committee's ranking, not pursuant to the scores that were assigned to the projects. And that would allow for partial funding for the 4th project. I think what you're discussing now is if for some reason the governing board chooses to ignore your recommendation and looks like they might fund the 4th project fully and move Boca to the bottom, you would like to write a letter saying, I strongly urge you not to do that. It's the wrong choice. Your recommendation has already been presented to the governing board. We're not in a position of, it's just not an appropriate additional step for the committee to say, let's vote to send a letter accompanying our recommendation. If any one of you wants to come to the governing board and say to the governing board at the meeting, I strongly urge you not to ignore our recommendation, you're welcome to do that. If you want to write letters as individuals saying, I strongly urge you not to ignore our recommendation, you're welcome to do that. But this idea that you would try to tell our staff to write a letter on your behalf saying to the governing board, I strongly urge you not to ignore the BTPAC's recommendation, it's just excessive. Your recommendation is presented. The guidelines that we've established allow you to re-rank the projects, and we present them in the ranking order that this committee has established. The conversation that's occurring right now feels frivolous. It feels excessive. And so I just wanted to give that context to you as the chair to guide your conduct of the meeting going forward.
Understand, I think from my perspective, I was just wanting to make sure, not necessarily adding a letter, but just making it clear as to what was in the minutes. And that last sentence that was in the minutes, from what I understood from Melissa, is not included in our recommendation. And And I'm not, that was my perspective. I'm not sure if that's others, but maybe we should hear from others. You know, I just wanted that to go along, that's all. And I didn't, you know, I respect your opinion, but I just wanted to make sure that additional sentence was in there.
So, and I don't have any virtual hands raised yet, but I do see both Sally and Brian have their 10
Okay.
cards up.
If you don't mind, Brian.
Sure. I also know that, I mean, we are all from our jurisdictions respectively. So if we feel like we need to have that conversation, you can also pass that conversation up the chain through your staff to the electeds who are on the governing board. So I don't feel like that step is necessary in Delray Beach. I tend to agree with Nick. I think the letter might just be a little bit additional work where it's not necessary. So if there's a concern, it could be passed up through the chain internally within your respective organizations rather than having a TPA staff. But I don't think that, you know, I think the recommendations are clear, the rankings are clear. I don't think a letter is necessary.
Sally?
I think the issue for me more that's brought out by this is this thing that we can have a project that objectively scores very poorly and yet is a project that everybody just looks at it and goes, man, this is the type of thing we should be doing. And that is an issue perhaps with the process. And what I'm suggesting is that we have some time. I mean, we've got at least one more meeting. And Nick, I absolutely would never suggest that this committee ask staff to write a letter on our behalf. I was quite disappointed that all my slides, which met all the criteria you sent me for the presentation to the TPA, were not included and then with no explanation. So I would never suggest that we direct staff to do additional work on our behalf in terms of crafting a letter. But I do think that this is where it falls in, is that we could all see, and presumably the TPA will see this as being a really good project and presumably follow our rankings. And I think that all the stuff about the funding is also just guidelines. So if the TPA wanted to, I think that they can say, oh, let's take that 200, whatever it was, shortage and just split it. Everybody gets, you know, whatever that would be, 25 or 50,000. I think they can do, am I correct? That is a guideline, just like the 25-point minimum is a guideline. So they can actually decide that the ranking, I don't think necessarily restricts them to exactly how the projects, the TPA board, to exactly how those projects are funded.
Dean?
I would support an asterisk at the bottom of the scoring sheet, just saying the committee recognizes that using the El Rio path allows early morning and late evening riding opportunities for FAU students, and therefore we think it's a substantial increased capacity project. In addition, we feel that the college students are not represented in the income, and therefore the committee felt strongly that this project should be ranked too. And that way, at least the board can go, hey, they're not scratching their head going, why was this decision made? And I think it's as simple as that, an asterisk with a couple sentences.
Brian?
Really quickly, I think if that question is brought up, I think the TPA staff are qualified to answer the question. I know that Nick has probably read through and understood and been part of this conversation. And then in addition to that, the minutes reflect, I know that they don't see the table, but I feel like, you know, the city of Boca Raton is there. They're able to speak to that. And the minutes clearly reflect the increase in trail capacity and the economic difference that comes about it. So I don't know if anybody on the phone wants to chime in too, or on the on Zoom, but it's just, I feel like it might be a little bit excessive at this moment.
Jean?
No, I just want to chime in. I know the TPA package are really long, and I know our packets are really long, and I would be able to miss a sentence in a 30-page package. And that's why an asterisk with 2 sentences just doesn't seem excessive to me.
Is there anyone else that would like to comment? This is member comments. Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry, it's me. I have Craig Pinder and Ted Goodenough with their hands raised.
okay, Craig.
Yes, I feel like it'll be a bit redundant to add the sentence. I feel like our recommendations are pretty clear. It's in the table, it's documented. And as Brian shared, that if the city of Boca Raton, if they would like to speak about it, they can. And we can also move up the chain of command if we would like to as well. We do have time before the meeting. But I'm enjoying the discussion, by the way, just to say that too.
Okay. Ted,
And you just need to give him a minute to unmute on his end.
okay,
Yep. Am I muted still?
we can hear
Nope,
you,
you're
Ted.
good now, Ted.
Okay, now you can hear me. All right. The comment on adding an asterisk and a couple of lines in a 30-page packet and prefacing with, I may miss a couple of lines in it. Aren't we now just adding more lines that we may miss or they may miss? It seems redundant and that we should just give them our opinion and our ranking and move on.
And I don't want to belabor this, but I mean, this item was on the agenda last month. So and this isn't agenda item for us to vote on now, it's just member comments. So we're in the very beginning. So Jean, if you have a final comment.
And I certainly may go down in flames, but I'd like to make a motion with an asterisk when it goes to the final board with 2 sentences. And we'll have to call a vote and I may go down in flames.
Alyssa, I'm not sure. I mean, this is member comment, so I'm not really sure that a motion at this point on a non-agenda item is the correct format. Help me because I'm new at this.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, the committee is welcome to make motions at any time they deem appropriate. However, we will let you know if you're making an inappropriate motion, if it's on an item that was brought up that was an agenda item at a previous meeting. In this regard, I feel it is a little bit close to bringing up an agenda item that was presented at a previous meeting, which was again in your TA meeting where the minutes reflect what exactly the TPA or what exactly the BTPAC wanted to occur.
Okay.
If you are making a motion to direct staff to do something, you are welcome to do so. And if you would like to do a roll call vote, so it's clear in the minutes, we can do that. But I believe that this item we're again bringing up something that was brought up previously. And I would like, if you do make a motion, Jean, if you can state it clearly so I can bring it up on the screen and
Okay.
reread
Question.
it.
The full board already saw our rankings and they liked them and they were okay with them.
The rankings that happened at the previous meeting? No, they
No.
have not seen that yet. That's what my staff was noting.
So I kind of think that since they haven't seen it, having a little asterisk that at least they don't scratch their head and say, what were they thinking about? So my motion is for the rankings to add an asterisk next to the Boca Raton to state the committee ranked this project high because of increased capacity to use the trail in early morning and late evening hours when it's dark. And because the college students' reduced income was not reflected in the income score.
Okay, so we have a motion by Jean. And do we have a second?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I want to ensure that I have the motion correctly. So Sally, I'm sorry, Jean, I have a motion to add an asterisk to the TA ranking. If you can bear with me. So I have a motion to add an asterisk to TA ranking next to the Boca Raton project that the committee ranked project higher because of increased capacity to use trail and early morning and late evening hours when it's dark because college students' reduced income was not reflected.
Correct.
That's how you want it stated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody have any edits to that that can make it better?
So as the motion maker, I suggest that if you have any edits that before that you make them, Jean. So if you're okay with that, then Madam Chair, I would say that you can ask for a second on that motion.
Sally, do you have a second?
No, I'm not clear what, I'm
So
not
I'm going
clear
to bring it
exactly
up
what's
on the
being
screen.
asked.
If you can just bear with me while I share my screen. So again, and my language may be a little bit rough, I'm sorry. So a motion to add an asterisk, and you guys keep making me say this word I'm struggling with, to TA ranking next to the Boca Raton project that the committee ranked project higher because of increased capacity to use trail in early morning and in the early morning and late evening hours when it's dark because college students' reduced income was not reflected. And I did get cut off, Jean, from what you were saying.
Mike, your mic, Jean.
Oh, after dark, add a period, and then put the ranking, the scoring did not reflect the college students' income is lower income.
So again, there's a motion to add an asterisk to TA ranking next to the Boca Raton project that the BT PAC ranked the project higher because of increased capacity to use the trails in early morning and late evening hours when it is dark. The scoring did not reflect the college students' lower income. Is that correct?
Sally, do you have a second?
No, I have a question. Sorry for staff. When this goes before the TPA, do they see the scores? So they see the TPA staff objective ranking per score. So they'll see Boca as last because it has 21 points, and they see those numbers, or they only see the rank 1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe that we give them the table that's in the backup.
Okay, do we have a second? Is that clear? Motion clear?
I second.
Okay,
And I'm sorry, I lost control of my Zoom. Oh, who was the second? If you can state your name verbally.
Betty.
Fadi, thank you.
okay.
So I have a motion
Yeah.
by Jean, a second by Fadi, and if you'd like a roll call vote, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
So Tracy Phelps,
Can I vote on this? I was the one that did the presentation for Boca.
I'm sorry?
Can I vote on this? I was the person who actually did the presentation and the work for the city of Boca.
I believe you can because you are, hold on a
Okay.
second. I'm
I just
sorry.
wondered.
I'll come back to you. I'm
Okay.
not sure actually, since you would gain. I
Okay,
just need to look at the. Yes, you can vote on this.
okay, I vote yay, good, yay.
Okay, and then the Boca Raton Bicycle Club again is vacant, so they will be marked as absent. Craig Pender,
I vote yes.
Ted Goodenough,
I vote no.
Joanne Peluso, and if I can have my staff assist with unmuting, Joanna Peluso.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Yes.
Joanne Scaria, I believe, is still absent, so I will mark her as absent. Fadi Nassar,
Yes.
Sally Shannon,
Yes.
Michael Howe,
Yes.
Jean Matthews,
Yes.
Yash Nagal,
Yes.
Michael Owens,
Artie, just to be clear, this is to add the asterisk and just like a sentence or two to add clarity.
correct. So what is on the screen and what I read aloud is what the motion is. Do you need me to
Okay.
restate it verbally?
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure. Yes.
Ryan Harding,
No.
John Roach,
Yes.
Brian Rusher,
Yes.
Stephanie Thoburn,
No.
I have that it passes 11-3, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay. I actually had something fun to talk about. We are, for board comments, we are doing what I call it a hot dog about. It's in Jupiter, in Abacoa. We have had a couple of really bad accidents on Central Boulevard in Abacoa. And it's an expanded boulevard with a very wide median. And if anybody goes down there, you know those roads are very fast. So, and then there's a cross street at University. So we're doing, and it's currently under construction, and it's a teardrop roundabout. So it pinches in the middle, and it really does a good job at expanding that roundabout and slowing the main route of the boulevard down. And it's going to be done in the middle of May. So next meeting, I'm going to come with pictures and I'm going to share it with Alyssa because we're super excited, because if we do it there and it works well, we'll do it at the other intersection. But it's going to be a little tricky because there's a school there. So that was my only comment. And is there any other comments from anyone else on the board before we move on to Alyssa's liaison report?
I see no hands or 10 cards up.
Okay, all right. Alyssa, please.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today, virtually and in person. So I will start off with the liaison report. The first thing on here is Florida's Local Technical Assistance Program, or the LTAP Center webinars. The Florida LTAP Center will host the following 3 webinars. For more information and to register, visit their website, floridaltap.org. The first is for Designing for Complete Streets, and that is going to occur May 6th, 13th, and 20th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. The second is FHWA's Emergency Relief Program training, and that is going to be May 11th from 9 to 12, or 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then the third is the Basic Highway Plan reading, and that is going to occur June 1st, 8th, and 15th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Next, we have Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. That is this month, May. And for more information, visit ridesmartflorida.com/May. National Bicycle Month is in May. I know we celebrated Florida Bicycle Month in March, but we're going to celebrate again now. Participate in events throughout the month of May, including the Florida Love to Ride Challenge, which has some great prizes. To register and learn more about that, visit their website, lovetoride.net/Florida. There is National Bike to School Day. That was actually yesterday, and communities are welcome to celebrate in any day in May that best fits their schedules. For more information, to register and see what schools are participating, visit their website, walkbiketoschool.org. And then National Bike to Work Week and Day is May 17th to 23rd, and National Bike to Work Day is May 21st. For more details, visit bikeleague.org/bike month. The May TPA Governing Board meeting is in person and virtual, and that is going to occur May 20th, 2021 at 9 a.m. And meeting details in the packet is available on our website, palmbeachtpa.org/board. Bicycle-Friendly Business Program recognizes employers and their efforts to encourage a more welcoming atmosphere for bicycling employees, customers, and the community. The application window is open through June 10th, 2021. To apply, visit bikeleague.org/business. It is a great designation. We actually have one here, and I definitely encourage everyone to go out and try to do it. Walk-friendly communities. Municipalities are encouraged to apply for the walk-friendly communities designation. That is open through June 15th, and more information is available on their website at walkfriendly.org. And of course, as always, high visibility enforcement funding is available. These are funds that are offered through FDOT for local enforcement agencies, and they help fund high visibility enforcement to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety. And applications are accepted on a rolling basis, and information is available on alerttodayflorida.org/HVE. And that is my liaison report.
Does anyone have any comments on Alyssa's report? If not, we can move on to the next item, which is informational items, draft fiscal year 2022 to 2026. The Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, is going to be presented by Jason Price, the TPA Transportation Improvement Program Coordinator.
Morning, everyone. So this morning I'm going to provide a presentation on the draft version of the Transportation Improvement Program for 2022 to 2026. And this particular document lists all of the programmed projects by FDOT and their work program, as well as other regional and local projects. So to begin, just to review, the TPA mission is to collaboratively plan, prioritize, and fund the transportation system. And the Transportation Improvement Program is focused on the funding or fund aspect of the TPA's mission. I'll first start with going over the timeline, which begins with, oh, I might have hit it too many times. Okay, which begins first with the TPA priority list that is approved last year in July 2020. That priority list is then provided to FDOT, which evaluates the funding and the cost of those projects, and then considers incorporating those giving funding availability into the draft tentative work program, which was approved this year in January 2021. We then take that draft tentative work program and develop the draft tip that is before you today. Next month, I'll provide to you the final draft version for formal adoption, and that'll be in June. And then once that is formally adopted, we then begin to operate under that document in months to come following that. Now, the tip sections in the document are broken down by categories here shown on the screen, where the TIP priority, the TPA priority projects are state road modifications, and the two grant programs, local initiatives and transportation alternatives. Other sections include the FDOT priorities, which is the strategic intermodal system capacity projects, followed by other projects that include other FDOT projects and local projects that I request from all the municipalities to be included in the document as well. And then there's also the other modes of transportation that include airports, railroads, and seaports, followed by the maintenance and operation of all of those facilities, which is major maintenance and operation and maintenance of roadways and transit. So in both the executive summary and the full draft tip document, you'll see a collection of summary tables, and this is just an illustration of how to view the tables from left to right. You'll see that it begins with the year the program was ranked and the priority, followed by a few other rows here where the FM number, the location, the description, and then a an illustration of the fiscal years by cost, which is 22 through 26 for this particular draft. That's followed by the needs that are remaining to fully fund the project and any notes that are pertinent to the project itself. Now, this particular year, in reviewing this draft tip, we were requesting the group to review and confirm the accuracy of the TPA priority list, which is the state road modifications, the local initiatives, and transportation alternative grants. Now, if you see any corrections or see anything regarding the funding, we're requesting you to contact one of the program representatives for either state road modifications, which is Connor Campabasso, and myself for local initiatives, and Alyssa Frank for transportation alternatives. So if you do see any errors of any sort, and with particular attention in the funding, please reach out to us so we can address those issues. And then as I presented this to the TAC, we are asking that if you are the lead agency of one of these TPA priority projects that are listed in the draft tip, to confirm inclusion of the project in your capital improvement program. And that's to indicate that you're aware of the project, you're programming the funds for the project, recognizing that this is the two grant programs are a reimbursement program, are on a reimbursement schedule. So you would fund the project yourself and submit for reimbursement. So in order to review the projects and to make it easier, we've provided the projects for the draft tip on our interactive web map that you can find on the front page of our website by clicking on the globe. Our website is palmbeachtpa.org/map. When you click on that globe, it'll take you to the interactive map where you can zoom in and click on projects. And you'll see that on the table of contents here, I've added the draft tip projects, as well as the current tip that we're operating under, which is the adopted projects, but the focus here is on the draft tip projects. When you click on one of the projects, you'll see that a pop-up box or dialog box will pop up with additional information about those projects. So I encourage you to go to our website, palmbeachtpa.org/map, and check out the projects. And there's a list of additional content here that may also be valuable. So moving on, there's a total funding in the work program by project section. And here you see the sections are listed on the left that are presented in the draft tip. And you can see that there's a breakdown of the funding source by federal, state, and local. And you can see the majority of the funding goes towards the strategic intermodal system managed and operated by FDOT with a significant amount of state funds. And those state funds do include the Turnpike projects and the Turnpike state revenues. So I'll first start with the state road modifications projects. And there is a 5-year target of about 114 million for this particular program. And there's upwards of 180 million that are being programmed in this draft tip before you. Some of the highlights for this for state road modifications include the State Road 80 lighting project, which is funded to construction in fiscal year 2026. There's also the Atlantic Avenue widening project from Jog Road to from Lyons to Jog Road, added some right of way in 2026. And US 1 from Palmetto Park to North Lake Boulevard, there's additional funds for transit shelters for construction. And lastly, Boca Raton and Palm Beach County have several signal projects that have been funded for design in 2026. And lastly is the State Road 7 Okeechobee Boulevard to North Lake Boulevard It's planned for construction in fiscal year 2022. Now, one thing to point out that I could have pointed out previously is when you see fiscal year 2026, that is kind of the most relevant piece of information for a new draft tip coming before you. That's called the new fifth year. So when you see a new draft tip each year, there's the addition of the fifth year, the farthest year out in this tip document. And so that's what's really happening here is there's new projects coming online, and that's what's being programmed in this fiscal year 2026. That's one component of it. I just wanted to point that out to you. So when you do see fiscal year 2026, it's typically new projects coming online and being a part of the tip document itself. So in addition to the highlights, there are some projects that have been delayed or not programmed. And one of them is the tri-rail extension to Jupiter has been delayed. And the other project that was delayed is the Atlantic Avenue State Road 7 project from Lyons Road. Well, Atlantic Avenue project from State Road 7 to Lyons Road. And lastly, the signal prioritization project for the Lake Worth Road corridor was not funded. Now I'll move on to the two grant programs that are administered by the Palm Beach TPA. The first being the local initiatives. There's a 5-year target of about 100 million in federal and state funds, and we see approximately 79 million being programmed in this TIP document, with the remaining of those funds being on the state road modification projects. Some of the highlights here are that the 5 projects that were submitted last year as part of this grant program were not funded due to insufficient funding. And one of the causes of that insufficient funding was the State Road 80 lighting project that the TPA governing board had directed us to fund through the funds that we have available. And those funds happen to come from the local initiatives grant program. And it took away about, say, 14 million in construction funds from this particular program. And so with that lack of funding or that transition of funding, we weren't able to fund the projects that were applied for last year. Now, to accommodate those projects in this current cycle, we've recommended that those projects be prioritized in advance of the projects that were submitted this year as part of the local initiatives grant cycle. So you'll see when new funding becomes available on our list of priority projects in the fall, you'll see the projects from last year being prioritized over the projects that were submitted this year. So there's a bit of a backlog of projects, but we're trying to accommodate all the projects in that manner. Now, other highlights, one project that did receive funding was the Tri-Rail application to purchase new train cars. They received $2.5 million in match, and that are going to be used for match funds with trip funds totaling $5 million to purchase the new train cars. And the last project is the town of Palm Beach had submitted an application for signals that has been advanced to be constructed in next year in fiscal year 2022. Now, I did include that Palm Beach project also here in the highlights these are construction highlights that you'll see that to expect in the first year of this TIP document for 2022. And you can see this program is producing a variety of different types of multimodal projects that include a 10-foot shared use path on Indian Town Road, the replacement of 40 bus stops for Palm Tran, and some separated bike lanes in Lyons Road, and adaptive control systems for Yamato Road. And as I mentioned, upgraded signals and incorporating those signals into the Palm Beach County signal system for the town of Palm Beach. I'll go over the Transportation Alternatives Program. So this has a shorter target of 3 years as opposed to 5 years, and a smaller pot of money of $9 million for federal and state funds. And in this particular draft, we see upwards of 13 million being programmed. And one of the significant highlights here is that all 4 projects for this transportation alternatives program was fully funded through construction into fiscal year 2024. And you see the projects listed here, which I believe you guys are pretty well versed with the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program. So some other highlights that you see from the Transportation Alternatives Program these are construction highlights of what this program is producing and what you can expect in this next fiscal year. And you see Northmore neighborhood sidewalks and shared use path. Lake Worth Road, they're getting near the Palm Beach College entrance. There's several different enhancements in terms of separated bike lanes, mid-block crossings, enhanced crosswalks, and the Clear Lake Trail connecting Okeechobee Boulevard to Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard. There'll be a 10-foot shared use path constructed. And you see the last 3 project here, a 12-foot shared use path on Dillman Trail, a 5-foot sidewalk and some pedestrian lighting for Bridgman Drive, Wellington Road, Prairie Road, and lastly, 24 pedestrian activated flashers and some ADA crossing enhancements for A1A Ocean Drive from Donald Ross Road to Indian Town Road. Now we'll transition back to some of the mainline projects. And so by mainline, I mean, I-95 and the Turnpike, and those are considered the strategic intermodal system projects managed and constructed by FDOT. And here's just a quick snapshot of the I-95 interchange projects that have that are listed in the draft tip for either delays or added construction funds. And you see them listed here for High Paluxo Road, Indian Town Road, North Lake Boulevard, and 45th Street. So in addition to those I-95 interchange projects, there's also some Turnpike projects that are coming online and that will be constructed within this TIP 5-year horizon. And predominantly it's widening from 4 lanes to 8 lanes. And you can see that there's segments listed here, starting at Palm Beach County line, going all the way to Beeline Highway. And the significance here is not only the widening from 4 lanes to 8 lanes, but the amount of funding that's being dedicated by Turnpike of upwards of, say, 720 or so million dollars collected through the Turnpike revenues. So through those Turnpike revenues that are collected, enables them to accommodate this type of widening and fund it. Now, there are also some other construction highlights to note, in addition to the grant programs and the other construction highlights that I previewed. And here's a list of them. There's more than this, but this is just some of the ones that I captured for the presentation. I won't read through all of them. I'll just leave the slide up here for you for a bit. So, the first one is roadway resurfacing projects. The next one is roadway capacity projects. And the last one is bridge projects. And so through one of the things to note to circle back around with the beginning of the presentation is when you view projects in your area that you may find that there's opportunities to implement a safety or a multimodal improvement, that when you see those types of projects, when you're viewing the map, to make those suggestions to us, and we can see if we can accommodate those types of projects. That has been successful in the past. We did hear from the TAC that there was a particular project that was successful in that way, where they were able to work with the DOT and incorporate some of the measures that they outlined in their mobility plan. So we encourage all of you to take a look at the map, take a look at the projects here, look at the resurfacing projects, the capacity projects, and if you see opportunities, to reach out to one of our program representatives, myself, Alyssa, or Connor. And with that, that's the conclusion of my presentation for this. If there's any questions?
See Sally's hand up.
Thank you for first of all, thanks for the presentation. I really appreciate the graphs and charts and everything. I did have a question on, I guess it's a definition really, on the strategic intermodal system where lots of our state dollars are going. And then the examples of the project are, like I-95, and then it includes Turnpike sort of stuff. So those are roads. Can you give an example of another mode of travel that's being funded in that, big wad of money? I mean,
Right.
Tri-Rail or
What was the last thing?
what was it? Would that include something like the proposed Tri-Rail expansion? I'm trying to figure out what the intermodal, in other words, what are the other modes aside from, because what I'm seeing are lanes, pavement.
Yes. I'm trying to think of other modes of transportation. I think Tri-Rail is part of it, but I'm not exactly sure if they receive some of that funding. I don't know. Is Tri-Rail part of it?
Yeah, I can help you with that question because there's a few in there.
Andrew's going to take over.
Sure. Good morning. Good morning, Andrew Euler, Deputy Director of Program Development. That's a good question. So there is a strategic intermodal system map out there, and that includes other designated facilities as well, rail being one of them. Also the port, airports. So those are also included in here, but they don't always go after the same funding as what you'll see on those big SIS dollars. They sort of have their own set aside funds to go towards those.
So it is that huge chunk of state money. It's primarily roads that we're talking about in
Yes,
terms of
yes,
the
correct.
modes of transportation. It's wheels on pavement.
Correct, very much so. So those,
Thank
the
you.
ones that Jason went through with all those ones for those SIS capacity projects, those are all road widenings and managed lanes.
Thank you.
Jean?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm interested in the CTS Turnpike widening where it ends at Beeline. And I'll tell you why. There's a really great trail system at Winding Waters that connects to trail system at Dyer Park, and eventually will connect to the trail system on the west side of the Turnpike at the Solid Waste Authority. And if that bridge over Beeline is being replaced, instead of doing a wall at like a 90-degree angle, they could do a straight up and down wall, and that would provide an access point under the bridge. And even though solid waste isn't ready to have that pathway open probably for another 10 years, if we got the design done now, we could connect it all. I mean, there could be like 8 miles of connected trails that would be beautiful, and a lot of them in the shade. Is it too late to talk about a design modification to that bridge over Beeline on the Turnpike?
It's worth taking a look at. It depends on how close the construction year is and if it's still under design or if they're already kind of going out to bid for the construction. So if you follow up with me in terms of do you have an FM number? Do you have what's the name?
It was on your slide. So it was the CTS slide on the Turnpike. And so, yeah, I'd love to follow up on you and see what we can do, because anytime we have an opportunity, it's just like there's a lot of paddling trails that are available. And sometimes when they replace bridges, if they just raise them a foot or two, you can have a more connected blue way. And I think we really need to look at all the recreational opportunities when we do our bridges and our roads.
I want to make sure I identify the project. Can you tell me?
We pull up the slide on the Turnpike.
So I
It's
just,
towards the very end.
so the West Palm Beach Service Plaza to Okeechobee Boulevard?
And then how about, what's the one after that?
That's the very last one on the Turnpike projects.
Florida Turnpike from Beeline to Indian Town. Is that what you're
That's, yeah, that's the one I'm referring to. And I don't know if that bridge is scheduled for replacement, but if it is, if we could make that change to even just one side to make the Turnpike Bridge more up and down. In fact, you know, it's something to look at all the major intersections along the Turnpike. Sometimes the hardest part for a bicyclist to get from east to west is access under I-95 or the Turnpike. So when there's an opportunity to create an up and down wall, you really open up like 15 feet of space, at least, I would think. And I think we need to look at that on the whole length of the Turnpike for all these projects. Like, is this a valid connection? We wouldn't want to spend the money if it's not a valid connection, but if it is a valid connection, it would be a good design change.
I also recall us a few years back doing a resolution to support whenever there's these major expansions of the Turnpike or I-95, that these east-west connections provide the planning and design for the pedestrian bicycle access under the bridge. So it was a resolution that this board sent, and it went through to the TPA as well.
Yes. So in addition to formally adopting the TIP document itself, we also include a resolution that lists out specific requests by the TPA that are generated from the committees like this. You know, this is where you kind of think about the direction of the funding and where we're heading, how we're spending the funding, and how we can incorporate more multimodal facilities, or, you know, just keep those things in mind and keep those things in the forefront by way of resolution to the roadway owners like FDOT and Turnpike to know that this is what we'd like to see in addition to the construction of those projects. Thank you.
I have Jean with her 10 card up, but I have no hands virtually.
Okay.
And I just want to thank the committee. Several years ago, a couple years ago, you guys approved crosswalks, and Neil Wantz was kind of lead in doing that, and for engineering. And those crosswalks, those signalized flashing crosswalks are going to be so beneficial to some of our parks in the North District, including Carlin. I think it's going to be a huge safety improvement, and I want to thank everybody for voting for it and for county engineering for implementing this project. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments?
No, Madam Chair. And then we did skip over the part for public comments, but there are none received for this item.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I do have some questions, actually. One is where is, we saw that there were state projects for replacements, and I saw your slide on bridges, but I didn't see anything on the US 1 bridge replacement in Jupiter. Was that in a previous fiscal year? I mean, it's still up for construction. We're planning on it. We've been working with FDOT. Would it even, just wondering why it's not in here.
I might not have listed it on the slides, but if it's in the TIP document, it's still a project that's moving forward.
I didn't see it in here.
So it's not in the.
I looked really carefully. And then I also discussed with one of my colleagues that sits on the TAC. And he didn't see it as well. So it's a pretty big project. I just want to make sure it didn't get overlooked. And if it did, please tell me where it is, because I just want to make sure that the wording is correct. I thought the bridge replacement was originally scheduled for 2023. And then there's a significant amount of right-of-way improvements that have to occur because the bridge is actually going to be closed for about a year.
Okay.
Okay.
we're looking it up to see, because yeah, a
Okay.
bridge replacement's hard to overlook.
And if I need to, I'll get with you afterwards because I just want to make sure. And then there was another project that is a county road, Center Street. It was originally, I mean, it may be all under county funding, but it was originally a resurfacing project to take the east portion of Center Street and add suicide lanes. I guess that's not the correct term now, but opposing turn lanes.
Yeah, the center turn lane.
And there's a desire to do more than that from the town and to add additional safety improvements such as bike lanes, which we don't have any. And then to also redo the sidewalks. So, you know, I don't know where that would come up under this, but I know it was on the county schedule originally for a $200,000 resurfacing project. And then it got bumped up to a greater project to add this middle opposing turn lane. And we have been trying to coordinate with the county to add these additional items. And from talking with Alyssa, it's a tier 1 priority to get bike lanes on that roadway as well.
Okay. I'll follow up, but using the map, that interactive map, going to that location.
Okay.
See, I take the map should include all of the county roadway projects too. I take their 5-year road program.
Oh, you do?
And I take all of those projects and I add them as our local projects in the TIP document and incorporate the geometries for those as part of the map. So if you're able to go to that location and click on that, you'll get additional information. But ultimately, if it's within feasibility, reaching out to David Ricks, the county engineer, that's who we would contact, and he would pass it along to the correct folks within Palm Beach County. They would be able to work directly with you since it's a county road and it's a county funded project. That's, that would be our role, or at least my role is, we would identify the project, look it up in their 5-year road program, see where it's at within design and construction, and then request that there's request a scope modification to incorporate those types of additions to the project.
Okay, yeah, I'll get with you after the
Sure,
meeting, just so we
sure.
can see where it's at.
All right.
Thank you, Andrew, again. While you mentioned that, I was able to look them up. The map that Jason created on our online map, when you go there and you can zoom to that project, you can look at the FM number. And when you click on that, there'll be a pop-up and it gives you a little bit of information, and you'll see our adopted transportation improvement program and then the draft transportation improvement program as a separate layer that you can click on. But I looked it up for that project, and that's that US 1 bridge replacement up near Jupiter. And it's a large amount of money, over $100 million. That was actually construction year is 2021. If we're talking about the one that's going over from US 1 from A1A to Beach Road going over that Loxahatchee River up there. So that one, it is in the tip now, our current tip, and its construction is in fiscal year 2021. So that's why you won't see a big amount in fiscal, like in the upcoming tip.
Okay,
The product's still in there. And the product number, actually, if you want to write it down,
yes,
is 4284002. And hopefully that's the one that you're referencing. That's
okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll look at that. I mean, I just knew that there's a lot of work to be done to alternate A1A prior to even construction, and we're in May, so I'm not sure fiscal year 2021 for construction is accurate.
it would carry on. Mhm.
Yeah,
The other one that you mentioned, Center Street from Loxahatchee River to A1A.
yes,
It's also in the tip. Jason put it in there. That shows design in fiscal year 2022.
okay,
And then construction around 2025 is what we have here. So that product number in our tip is 2023-9907. So according to this, it says 600,000 in design in fiscal year 2022. So that would mean there's still time to work with the county to hammer out any of those design details.
Perfect, thank you.
Madam Chair, I do have Ted with his hand raised and Jean, your tent card's up. I think she has comments as well.
Okay, Ted?
Yeah, in the last question, the map, in the answer to it, the map came up again. So, and I had gone out to www.palmbeachtpa.org/map, and I tried to navigate the map, and maybe I'm missing something. I looked for links to different projects and I didn't find any. And then I looked for buttons that might take me to different projects and I didn't find any. And if you're using a screen reader, that's the way that you would navigate to find what you wanted to look at. Maybe it's something that we need to look at offline so that you can hear what's going on and maybe fix or help me to understand where my ability to navigate this is, because I can't find anything.
Okay, I built the map through a service. It's a ESRI is the name of the service, the web mapping platform. And it might be just something I need to follow up to see if there's an add-on of some sort to incorporate that into the interactive map so it's more user-friendly and more accessible. Because
it is the hardest thing, in my opinion, to get accessible is maps, because it's people aren't thinking when they're building the maps, they're not thinking about, oh, what if I can't see, and what if I need to use a screen reader? They're just thinking visually because they're on the internet and they're looking at it and they're building it. So I don't know if you want to talk after or later in the week, that's what, tomorrow, regarding this, and I can let you listen in to what I'm hearing and what I'm not getting out of it.
that would be helpful. First thing, I want to do a little bit of research with Esri to find out when you use their, what it's called AGOL, ArcGIS Online, when you use their interactive maps, if there's some kind of extension that makes it more accessible. My inclination is they probably thought of this. It's just something I may need to add to the map.
Okay.
But I haven't done that research yet to find out, because it's a global project. It's a global product that is used worldwide. And I'm sure this isn't the first time this has come up. So they must have some kind of addition to add to the map, or an alternate version that enables it to be more accessible. I just have to do a little more research, and then our discussion will be a little more fruitful once I reach out to Esri and ask them this question and get a response.
Yeah, I do believe Esri has the ability to do it. I just went through Boynton Beach, and we went through their new maps that they're doing for different projects. And although it wasn't completely accessible, it was more so than what I was just looking at.
And just a follow-up question for that, were they static maps that you zoomed in and that were like a PDF kind of map, or was it an interactive map on a platform? Do you
It's an
recall?
interactive map with, and I don't think it's up yet. They were testing it with me and to see if it was usable and accessible. And it was about the city center and the different projects that are going on there.
Okay, I may reach out to you for the Boynton Beach contact as well if I find out more information from Esri, and they're already going down that path. So it might be fruitful to see how they're integrating it into their presenting their maps.
Sure. Sounds
Thank
great.
you.
I'd be glad to help you.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jean, thanks, Ted.
Hi, I just have one more comment on the design of the bridges. When they replaced the bridge on US 1 next to Burt Reynolds Park, one of the things that Parks and Recreation did, the county did, we entered into a joint participation agreement with FDOT, and we created a 12-foot brushed concrete pathway under the bridge with a handrail and lighting so people can access east and west side of Burt Reynolds Park without going under over A1A, you know, it's not. And then I know the town of Jupiter also did the same thing for the Riverwalk project. And so there are pathways under the bridge. And while on not all bridge, it wouldn't be appropriate if there was residential on one side and commercial on the other, it certainly wouldn't be appropriate. But it could provide interconnectivity if it was a situation where there was commercial on both sides, and it could avoid some of the on-road crossings. So I just think as a design consideration, it's something to look at.
Yes, very good. Thank you for that example. Was there anybody else with comments? No? Okay, so then the next agenda item is the draft pedestrian and bicycle facilities for January to March of 2021. And this will be presented by Andrew, the TPA Deputy Director of Program Development. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning again, everyone. So I'm going to be going through just an informational item. This is a draft pedestrian bicycle fatality summary. And so what we've been tasked with as TPA staff by the governing board is to be a little bit more timely in our presentation of our most vulnerable users in Palm Beach County when it comes to pedestrian bicycle fatalities. And so what we're trying to do is make it a little easier to understand what's happening with these fatal crashes and provide these updates quarterly to you all as a committee and then also the governing board. And so what we have for you today is a draft that was available in your packet. It's just 2 pages. It's a map that includes the pedestrian and bicycle fatalities for January 2021 to March 2021. And then there's also the second page, which is just a review of one crash that occurred in that time period. And so what we're trying to get from you all today is just general discussion on is this a useful document and what types of improvements can we make to it to make it useful for everyone in the committees and then also for governing board and then anyone else who really wants to use it. So we're trying to make it a more user-friendly item. And so on the slide is just the two pictures of what was provided in the backup. It's the map of the fatal pedestrian bicycle crashes and then the review form. And on the fatal pedestrian bicycle review form, what we're really trying to do with this is create a quick summary of the police report. So right now the police report is 3 pages long. And it does include some personal information that is private, that cannot be released. And so what we're trying to do is take away some of that information and then other information that may be relevant, but maybe not is relevant for a review. And we're trying to just put what is relevant into one form that's 1 page that includes a summary of some of the data that is in the police reports from that 3-page document, the crash diagram from the crash. And then the second part of the form is really to provide staff observations based on some of the material in the police report and the crash diagram. And then also us just looking at the intersection from Google Earth or going to a field review. And then lastly, potential actions that we could do related to this specific fatal crash. So in the backup, the 1-pager we had for you was for a crash up near Jupiter, in Jupiter, it was Indian Town Road. Near the intersection road was Loxahatchee Drive. So this was at that intersection. And this was a March 22nd, 2021. And it was around 7:14 p.m. So when the sun was going down at that time. And so we have additional information, more in the general information portion of this form that talks about the road surface, if it was wet or not, or dry, the weather, the lighting at the time of the crash, and then the harmful event. And then there's individual information related to who was involved in the crash. So in this instance, for Indian Town Road at Loxahatchee Drive, this crash on March 22nd includes a driver and then 2 bicyclists. And in the individual information included in this form, we have the actions taking place at the time of the crash, the age, conditions out there on the roadway, and weather. If there's any vision impairments. For example, in this one, we had the driver who experienced a glare, according to the police report. Whether there's a distracted driving, drugs involved, alcohol involved, and then the severity of the injuries or fatalities. So in this instance, we did have a fatality, one of the bicyclists, and then the other bicyclist, there was a serious injury. The next portion of it is a crash diagram. And so in the crash diagram, it shows the intersection and design of the roadway and provides a little more detail of what was occurring during that event. So in this case, we had a driver heading westbound on Indian Town Road, and they ran a red light at sunset, and glare was a contributing circumstance as identified in their police report. At that same time, 2 bicyclists who were on the bicycle were crossing the crosswalk heading southbound, and they had the right of way, they had the green light to do this. And so our observation was to talk about the driver who ran the red light at sunset and glare being a contributing circumstance. And then, although the report notes not distracted, the driver entered the intersection at high speed well after red light phase began. And so in that section, we would provide staff observations. And then the last section was to provide potential actions. And so for each fatal crash, we would have potential actions related to maybe not just the design, but maybe also policy actions related to at state or federal level, or even enforcement actions. So in this crash, we have, as staff put in, TPA funds and FDOT installs high contrast yellow backplates on east-west signal heads to improve visibility at sunrise and sunset. So that's when you're heading eastbound in the morning or westbound at night. Providing high contrast yellow backplates will hopefully reduce the glare on signal heads to improve visibility. And the second one was related more to a statewide policy decision, would be TPA advocates in Florida legislature increases mandatory penalties for distracted driving and vehicular homicide. And so that's what the crash report we have right now is set up for, or our summary is sort of out, our outline of it. It's really a template. This is just to give you an example of what it would look like. And so I can answer any questions about what we put on this crash report, but it's really about the overall display of this one pager. And if you all find it useful, if there's anything else that can be added. And I just wanted to make one more note. I know the county and Fadi's on your committee. Fadi's also working on something similar to this as well. So we're going to touch base with him after this as well to get more feedback and to figure out the best way to implement a one pager like this into the future to provide to our committees, you all, and to the board. Thank you.
Thanks. Do we have any comments on this?
I don't have any public comments on this. I do have some hands raised. I believe in person it's just Brian and Jean, and then I have Joanna, Ted, Tracy, and Fadi with their hands raised.
Okay. Brian?
Sure. So if I'm reading this correctly, 18 people died while walking and 2 people died while biking in a 3-month period.
Yes, according to the records from Signal 4 now, it might go up. Yeah.
I think it would be, this is a very helpful and a very useful document, and not just for us, but as every quarterly, you just put a press release out that's saying, hey, there are, I mean, by all metrics, we'll probably have at least 100 people that die on our roadways this year just walking or biking, which is really shameful. One, and then two, the thing that I think you could potentially add for this report is if you can coordinate with the municipalities on their input, because we might have complaints from citizens on nearby projects or other capital improvements, which might be helpful to add. I'm not sure if there's space on this. I think it's great in the format you have. So you might be out of room. I like the one pager. It's very clean, very clear, but if there's other observations or opportunities for municipal input, be helpful to keep that in mind. So thank you for doing this.
Jean,
Can you show page 1? I just wonder if entering a column saying speeding would be helpful. I know you've considered it and there's a reason.
Sure, and we'll bring that up if you'd like. But I have the crash report in front of me here, and I believe there is a column dedicated to whether there was speeding or not. So I can make sure I look through that and see. Actually, Fadi might know off the top of his head, but
Yeah, it's the driver action.
okay, and it'll identify speeding. Regardless, we can look it up and make sure we add it.
Jean, did you have any other comments?
That was it. I thought that would be helpful, but I like Brian's suggestion. If, this got out to municipalities and having this is such a useful tool when we go to put in sidewalks and neighbors say, hey, we don't really want it. We can point to it and say, hey, aren't your loved ones living in your neighborhood?
Joanna?
Thanks. I have a few questions. The first one, so will the report, I see on this one, for Jupiter, you have both fatality and serious injury. Will we only get this report when there's a fatality or also a serious injury?
That's a good question. The first part of this top screen here could be ran pretty quickly for any type of fatality or serious injury because it's coming from a database. But our analysis is and our staff time is only going to be spent on ones that are fatalities related to pedestrian bicyclists. So we're only going to provide it quarterly for fatalities related to pedestrian bicycles.
Okay, sounds good. And then is there a reason race wasn't included on the report?
I can look and see if that's a something that's provided on the police report. We do have age and we have some other personal information. I don't know if I see anything about the race of individuals.
Yeah, I don't believe it is on the police report.
Okay.
Okay. And then the other question, would it be reported out to community on a 3-month basis? Is that the case that you said would be released?
Yes, and we're looking to do it quarterly. So it would be on a 3-month basis. Now, the caveat to that is just an example for you. The crash report that we just provided to you is actually one that's not on the map. So I don't know if you all saw that little Easter egg there, but it's actually not on the map there because it's actually not in the database yet for Signal 4. So we had to actually request that report specifically because it was something that was coming up in the media. So we're actually going to provide these as soon as possible, but it might be the delay in when we provide it. So for example, if it's Q1, like we just provided, it may be more beneficial for us to provide it to you about 2 months afterwards, because it does take time. There's a maximum time they have to get the report into the system for the police officers. And then there's also a waiting period too about when it's available. So we don't get this data within the week that the crash happens. It takes a few months.
Okay.
So there will be a
Thank you.
delay on that, but it is supposed to be quarterly.
Perfect. And I did also want to agree with Brian's recommendation for including potentially including any municipal plans related to around that roadway. Thanks for this. I think these reports are going to be extremely helpful.
I have Ted.
Ted,
This is a digital document? Or is it paper?
The reports will be provided as PDFs, and so they should be able to be readable and accessible that way.
Right.
The map itself, I'm not sure, it won't be, but the actual reports, I believe they are made in PDF or made to a PDF, and all the data is searchable through that.
Okay. And you mentioned that there's a photograph, and then there's also a diagram. Is there alternate text put in so that that is described?
Yes, we can work on that and provide that in there. There is, on the diagram, there is text related to the road names and where the vehicles are located and where the pedestrians are located. And it's actually in the diagram as text. When we pull this, it shows up as a picture format. So we'll have to see if we can get that with the text included in it as more of a PDF version of it instead of just a picture.
Yeah, what you can do with a diagram or a picture is you can add kind of behind the scenes alternative text, and that allows you to tell people what is in that that diagram and or picture, basically giving a description.
okay, thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ted.
Thanks.
I have Tracy next.
Okay,
I would like to see the time of day on that table or time period. Morning, afternoon, evening. Obviously, it makes a difference if it's dark or if it's light.
Yes, and I if you go back to the PDF of the screen, it should be at the top right. I believe we included the time of day.
On the okay, so yeah, I was looking at the table. Okay.
Yep. The top will have general information about the crashes. So there's a lighting one that's inputted, and then there's also a time.
okay.
Okay, are you guys do anything to look at if it was any malfunctions of the signal, or whether the yellow and all reds clearance times were appropriate, or the pedestrian walk times were up to the standards? Things like that, or are you just going based off the police report?
That's a good question, and I think so what we're going to be doing is in the second part of the report is going to be more staff observations. So, for example, working with Fadi, if there's like these signal issues that are reported, or anything else going on with whoever maintains the roadway, to identify what the other circumstances that were involved in the crash. And so that would be put at the bottom of the report.
Okay. That's all. Everybody else stole all my other questions, so that's all I had.
Margie, is there any,
I'm sorry.
are there any more comments?
I have
questions?
2 virtual and then 2 in person. Well, Brian just put it, so 1 in person.
Okay,
I have Fadi, John, and then Sally.
Fadi,
Yeah, I want to say that, Andrew did a really very nice job. I think the one page looked very professional. There's a lot of nice information in it. And it's something that's going to be useful to look at all of these fatal crashes. To put in perspective, I think the county has a little bit larger scope. We're looking at fatal crashes, we're looking at serious injuries, and we're also looking at all type of crashes to find clusters, that, we can identify as issues for roadway improvement or other features. We're a little bit behind because, as Andrew mentioned, I think his data come from Signal 4 Analytics, and they have about a third of the crashes are not, they're not geocoded. We at the county, we probably geocode about 95% of our crashes. However, we're a little bit behind in digitizing our database and output. We had a contract with the same professor who did Signal 4 Analytics to work on our database, but I think he's been pretty much busy with updating Signal 4 Analytics, so we're kind of behind on that. But our expectation is, once this is done, to have a little bit more accurate data than what Signal 4 provide, specifically for Palm Beach County. My only comment regarding the form that Andrew prepared is that the example he picked is pretty straightforward, and the kind of action recommendation is probably kind of easy to determine. But unfortunately, most of the fatal crashes, especially with pedestrian, are much more complex. They usually happen late at night, somebody darting or dashing in the middle of the road when it's not very well lighted. Very few of them are at intersections. So we believe that I think the engineering division is much more qualified to provide a corrective action for the majority of these crashes. So this is my only kind of comment between us and Andrew. But my objective is really to work closely with Andrew to come up with something that's going to benefit everyone. And I also agree that we need to get input from the cities, municipalities. I mean, for us, unfortunately, we're still waiting to digitize our output from our database, but it's going to be a main aspect of our work. And as you know, the peak season is from January to kind of March this year, more toward May. We're focusing on collecting traffic data, but our staff going to be doing field investigation, as I think it's been asked before. We will kind of use our form to almost like screen those crashes, identify the one we need to do field investigation, check, is the signal working properly, to push button, is it working? Is the signal timing? Do we need to provide LPI or something else? So we will do kind of initial screening to see the one that we can come up with recommendation just based on the information provided and maybe checking street views or other stuff. And the one where we need to do a more detailed investigation. But in any case, I really like what Andrew presented. I think it's a very nice, simple form, easy to see with the main information. Ours will probably have a little bit more technical information in it. And we have more resources to do field investigation and more detailed analysis of a lot of these fatal crashes as well as other type of crashes. Thank you.
I have John, Sally, and then Joanna.
Good morning. Just one comment or one suggestion, and I don't know, the map that you provided, is that always going to be a static map or is it interactive online? My concern being if it's a static map, like the one that you've shown here, the symbology obviously covers, several different roadways on that map, and it's hard to identify, which roadway it's tied to. And is there a way to put an identifying number or what have you on the particular symbol so that you could quickly refer to the appropriate information sheet that you've provided? If I go in there and I see the one, Southern Boulevard east of the Turnpike, which data sheet is that I could refer to for that particular incident? Otherwise I'm having to flip through all of them to figure out which one it is. So I didn't know if there's a way to put a chart or somehow put an identifying number with that symbol or that location that would allow me to refer to the data sheet a little quicker.
This is Andrew. I think we could put that into our workflow. I think there's some ways that we can accomplish that, to have it reference a specific page. I'm not sure if it'll be based on the map, because that might be a little more of a workflow to put it with a number in the map and then also correspond to the correct crash page. If it's just like a 1 through 30 or however many crashes there were that in that quarter. But there are some ways we can link them for you. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was, yes, this is gonna be a static map that's in the backup quarterly to you all, but we are working on having a cleaner way of providing this data on our online map as well. We actually do have a fatal and serious crashes layer on there right now. It's pointing directly to the FDOT source of it, and there's a lot of data in there, so it's not easy to discern, and there's a lot of crashes. So we are working towards providing a cleaner version of this digitally on our map.
Yeah, I mean, digitally, you'd be able to zoom in to the point where, the symbology is clear as to the location in which that incident occurred. A static map that's covering such a broad area, and then you have the, a symbol of a particular size covers a pretty big region. It's hard to identify exactly where that incident occurred. So just some thoughts.
Makes sense. Sally?
Yes, I really like the format for this report, the one page, and particularly having the diagram set up so you can really kind of visualize what happened in the certainly in this particular case. I'm happy to hear that the county is going to be looking not just at fatalities, but where there are serious injuries. And the one suggestion I would have for the TPA would be more in terms of outreach. I hear just anecdotally, because people come to me and say, what can we do about this? I was nearly run off the road, or I know 3 people that have been in an injury, and it doesn't show up anywhere. And I'm thinking that just like we've done pushes with the helmets and give 3 feet, do something that would encourage members of the public who are out there cycling or walking and are involved in, lots of times people are knocked down and they get back up and they go on. There's not a police report or something, but to be able to encourage people to report those types of incidences so we can get a clearer picture of places that may be dangerous, where there's an opportunity to, or a fatality waiting to happen. And I think I don't ride A1A myself, but that's something I hear from my cycling friends who do, as that there's several areas along A1A where there have been a number of accidents, not resulting in a fatality, but accidents. And then I'll ask, okay, was that reported to the police? It'll be no, the person didn't want to take the time. They weren't injured to the point, the car's gone, but an outreach to encourage that, whether it's outreach through bicycling clubs, to encourage at least reporting so that we can identify and we hear about, because it does no good when we don't hear about it and there's no report. Then we don't know about those particular areas. But that's it. I think the report format and everything is very good, very readable and well done.
I have Tracy Phelps with his hand raised.
Do you mind if I respond to that?
Sure, Andrew.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. That's a really good suggestion. We we have a online map that we have for comments where people can submit comments. So I think we can make sure that we have our public relations encourage that and reporting through that. She's actually in the room right now, Melissa. I don't know if you all met her. She's our new public relations director. I'll say director of public relations. So, but that's great that she's on staff now, and looks like she's read down notes. So that's something that we can encourage people to do through our newsletters and other ways. And I know there's other avenues out there for people to submit comments. Sometimes these cities have some types of apps. This has been our approach to it, and so we'll make sure we encourage that. And we can see if we can ramp that up in some way too. Because I know, when you're out there and you experience that, you probably want to, note it quickly instead of having to go online later on and then go to a map. So we'll have to think through that a little bit more as staff, but that's a really good suggestion.
Joanna, are you? I thought you said.
John asked my question about how we would get to the information and if it was going to be interactive. So Andrew,
Okay.
took it. Thank you.
Tracy?
Just my question is, we had a golf cart fatality on Yamato Road. Would that be something considered, or is that a vehicle, or is that something that we would consider?
That's a good one. I am wondering, so I know I'm going to give it a different example. I don't believe that the fatalities that you get on the railroads pop up in this database. So we have to get those from somewhere else. When it comes to a golf cart fatality on the roadway, I think if the police are responding to that, it should be entered as a crash in their system. I'm not sure if anybody can correct me or not, but I believe it would be, but we can look into that. It's interesting.
No, I just wonder if that's something, I don't know, is it a vehicle? Would you think it's a bike? I mean, it's a little bit, what is a golf cart? So, and I just know we had one the day after we had that fatality that killed the federal judge at A1A and Spanish River. So
it did involve a vehicle though, correct? It was a vehicle.
Yeah, there's a vehicle and a golf cart, yeah.
Okay. So it would be coded in some way. I don't know the correct terminology for it though.
Okay.
I have Fadi and Ted with their hands raised.
Okay, Fadi?
Yeah, just kind of responding to this question, it depends how the police report that crash. I know in the summary files we get, there is a file for non-motorized and a file for driver 1, driver 2, driver 3. And in fact, there is even a bigger question, which I have. What happens if you have electric scooter, electric bike? Is this a non-motorized or a motorized? So you brought up an important point, and I think this probably will end up making some changes at the way police report things, but I don't think we're there yet.
It is a good point. Ted?
I believe that the golf cart would be considered like a Segway, a motorized mobility device.
Although some golf carts are able to ride on the road. So if they have all of the safety features, belts, seat belts, lights, they have a plate for it and they're considered a motorized vehicle. Some do not. So there's the variation in golf carts. Just if those are the end of the comments. Okay. Just one thing, I brought up the hot dog about in Jupiter that, I was really excited. That came about through a fatality. And I didn't bring that up, but that's what we're trying to avoid. And that's what we're trying with all these comments is we're trying to bring forth this discussion. The issue of, the one issue of the example of Indiantown Road and Loxahatchee Drive, that is a school route. And there's a crossing guard there. And then the age of that driver was very interesting because it's 18 to 25. You know, maybe, and I see it a lot, particularly with our younger drivers, and maybe we need to do education related to younger drivers because I see them be a little bit more reckless, and maybe that portion needs to be relayed because I think that's what we're trying to do here is try to, you know, make things safer for bicyclists, pedestrians and everything and not have to go through the fatality route. Thank you, Andrew. And was there any public comment, Margie?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. That was very good and it all gets you thinking about why we're here. The next item is the FDOT context classification, and that will be presented by Larry Wallace from FDOT. And I'm assuming Larry is virtual?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I am, Madam Chair. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, good morning, Palm Beach TPA. My name is Larry Wallace. I am the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Complete Streets Coordinator for FDOT District 4. And thank you for the opportunity for the FDOT Complete Streets team to present on context classification. First, I would like to introduce the consultant Complete Streets team, Mr. Stuart Robertson with Kimley Horn and Mr. Dan Hardy with Renaissance Planning. Stuart will be presenting on the design criteria, and later Dan will be presenting on the technical data related to context classification. As well as I will be presenting on context classification examples and the Complete Streets team workflow. Upon the conclusion of the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. With that, let's begin the presentation with Stuart describing the various context classifications. Stuart, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Larry, and good morning, Madam Chair, members of the BitPack. My name is Stuart Robertson with Kimley Horn and Associates, and just wanted to share with you that FDOT has adopted a context classification system consisting of 8 classes. And the context classification system is largely based on the transect planning principles. FDOT's context classification guide was published in 2020, and we have a link later in this presentation to where you can download the guide. It's also linked to in your agenda packet as well. The distinguishing characteristics of each of the 8 context classifications are written in the text on this particular slide, and these help to provide an overall analysis of the area as we are defining context classification. We also have primary measures and secondary measures, which include both quantitative and qualitative measures for helping us to further assign context classification to a roadway before it goes into the scoping phase, so that the designer can know which context classification to use for design criteria when designing a project. Next slide, please. So context classification is now a primary design control in the FDOT Design Manual, or FDM, which are the design criteria that design engineers use to when they are working on designing a roadway. One of the most fundamental design criteria that is affected by context classification is design speed. And as you progress from classifications such as C1 natural up through C6 urban core, the allowable design speed range gets slower and slower as we progress toward a C4 urban core criteria. For example, C4 urban general has 30 to 45 as the allowable design speed range, but when we move into a C5 urban center, which is a identified economic or civic center within a community, the allowable design speed range is shorter and slower, 25 to 35 miles per hour. Other criteria that are affected by context classification include things such as lane widths, median widths, on-street parking, and the primary ones that we are looking at context for are listed on this particular slide. Next slide, please. Sidewalk design is covered by FDM Chapter 222 for pedestrian facilities. And the presence of a sidewalk is now context specific, as well as the width that is the standard width for sidewalks being context specific. The standard width of sidewalks get wider and wider as we progress towards C6. And this really comes into play on reconstruction projects, new sidewalk construction projects, or other types of roadway modifications, such as through the State Road Modifications Program of the TPA, or grant projects that are widening the roadway. For resurfacing projects, a sidewalk width of at least 6 feet is allowable to be kept because we oftentimes don't have enough space in C5 and C6 areas to widen the sidewalk in those resurfacing projects. And the scope is generally included within only the curb to curb section of the roadway and not on the outer border. Next slide, please. Bicycle facilities, which are Chapter 223 of the FDM, are also affected by context classification. 7-foot buffered bike lanes are now the preferred, and I think we can even use the word standard, the standard bicycle facility on the state highway system per the FDM Chapter 223. Green color asphalt are used in traffic mixing zones, such as where a motor vehicle path of travel crosses a bike lane at right turn lanes and designated bus bays. Next slide, please. Shared use paths may now be substituted for bicycle lane when certain context criteria are met. When the design speed is 35 miles per hour or greater, and if the context is C1 through C3, we can maintain separation through intersections, and there are minimal conflict points or driveways. So that's a change. We used to be able to provide shared use paths in addition to bicycle lanes, but now on higher speed roadways, they can be substituted. But in lower speed design situations, in more urban areas, C4, C5, and C6, a bicycle lane is still required, even if a shared use path is also provided. Shared use path width ranges from 10 to 14 feet, with 12 feet being the standard or preferred for shared use paths. Next slide. And finally, we have separated bicycle lanes, which are now included in the FDM Chapter 223. These can be one-way or two-way bicycle facilities, and they are distinguished by being separate from the pedestrian space. So they are specifically not shared use paths. The width criteria related to separated bicycle lanes is that we have a 3-foot minimum separation, which can be through traffic islands, such as in the photograph showed on this slide. The one-way bicycle facility should be a minimum of 6 feet wide, and for two-way bicycle facilities, a minimum of 10 feet wide of bicycle space. And that's in addition to the 3-foot minimum separation. The photograph on this slide is from State Road 60 in an urban core area of downtown Tampa. And Larry, I'll hand it back to you to go through some project examples of context classification. Next slide.
Excellent, great job. Thank you, Stuart. In this slide, you will notice there are 4 examples of context classifications. The upper left corner illustrates C1 natural. Next, in the upper right illustrates C2 rural with a wide sidewalk. The lower left illustrates a C3 residential along State Road A1A. And the lower right illustrates C3C commercial. Next slide, please. As we continue with the examples, in the upper left illustrates the C4 urban general located near the City Girl consignment and Palm Beach Post. Next, in the upper right illustrates the C5 urban center along Atlantic Ave in Delray Beach. And finally, the lower center illustrates the C6 urban core along State Road 70, heading east towards downtown West Palm Beach. Okay, that wraps up the context classification examples. Next slide, please. This slide provides the FDOT District 4 Complete Streets workflow and how a context classification is assigned, recommended, and then ultimately available to the TPA for review and feedback. Firstly, let's begin with the project being programmed in the FDOT work program. And then an FDOT PM is assigned. Next, Stuart will provide an initial assessment and then provide his recommendation to Dan Hardy. Next, Dan, utilizing sophisticated software with data analytics, he then provides his context classification recommendation to the FDOT Complete Streets team. At this time, I'll go ahead and introduce the team. From left to right is myself, then followed by Larry Heimowitz in planning, Lois Bush in planning, as well as Dan Hardy. This is the core Complete Streets team and will provide the final decision on an FDOT lingo called the Project Level Context Classification, or acronym PLCC. The PLCC is then forwarded to the FDOT PM to be used for the project's design criteria and digitally signed in the typical section package. Then finally, the FDOT PM forwards the PLCC to the local agency, such as the TPA, for review and feedback if necessary. Okay, that concludes the workflow and my portion of the presentation. I would now like to introduce Dan Hardy, and he will continue the remainder of the presentation. Dan, please take it away. Thank you.
Great. Next slide, please. And good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Pleased to be talking to you today. And I just want to wrap up the presentation with a couple of resources and a little bit more explanation. What you can see on this slide is a couple of links to what is called the District 4 Modal Viewer, which, as you can see on the slide, provides you information about context classification throughout District 4, and also lets you see behind the scenes a little bit of the work that we've done. As Larry and Stuart have mentioned, as projects come through the system, they are reviewed against what we call a provisional or preliminary context class shown on the map. So you can see how we've assessed all the roads in the district. Yet some of those, when we actually look at the project specific things, we make adjustments to them as part of this process. And that's about 80% of the roads end up matching the map, and about 20% we see something on the ground that you just can't catch in GIS. And so there's a change made, and that's the process that's just been described. You can, in the upper left, search for a particular roadway, or you can zoom and click and pan and get a sense of both the context classification information, as well as this resource does have a lot of really other good information about just roadway form and function, and some supporting demographic type of information. Next slide, please. And again, as to wrap things up, there are a few other links that may be very helpful to kind of a further exploration of context classification, including the FDOT Central Office Context Classification Guide that guides all the district in their work. The Complete Streets website, and again, context classification really is a key initial part of getting all the streets to be complete streets and respecting the communities they serve. And then District 4 has also put some of the same information you've just heard into about a 6 or 7 minute long training video that also might just be helpful as a resource, particularly if you have constituents in your communities that are wanting to know more about context classification. So that concludes our presentation, and we'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. That was really informative to look at the transects in conjunction and with FDOT's latest work. Are there any public comments?
No, Madam Chair. I do have Fadi with his hand raised.
Okay, Fadi.
Thank you. Very nice presentation, very informative. I have two questions. I think one is really based on the posted speed, on the speed limit. And the DOT has a manual for the speed limit, and I think the language is very specific. I'm just going to read it. The posted speed limit should not differ from the 85 percentile speed by more than 3 miles per hour. Speed limits of more than 8 miles per hour below the 85 percentile are not authorized. And how do you kind of reconcile this with the classification based on your context classification when, first of all, I think most of Palm Beach County, west of I-95, whether gated or not, they seem to fall into one classification, though they may be extremely different in their characteristics. But when you have a very long straight road, typically your 85 percentile will exceed the limit that your classification kind of propose for that. So how do you kind of solve this conflict?
Take a coin flip. I'll jump in and say that the numbers presented here are design speeds, and so of course design speeds are not the same as posted speeds, but they are, they're giving the designer some guidance in terms of how to put the elements together. Of course, as you point out, you can have a straight flat road that may have a 40-mile-hour design speed, and it feels comfortable to drive it at 60, and that's the challenge I think you're talking about. And I'll just kind of mention that one of the things that I think FDOT is really evolving towards, and you're probably all familiar with, is the concept of target speed, which really is, what are the things you can do that are both within the design, and then part of context class really is trying to reflect the boundary of the public realm, where design speed and posted speed rule, and the private realm, which is where you have, how buildings, trees, and other things that are outside the right of way interact with the street. So the goal is, if you have a straight and flat road that really is rural, it should be designed for that higher speed. Hopefully, both within the design and then the context of the roadway itself, there's things you can do to help manage the speed, so that if your target speed is set appropriately, ultimately the 85th percentile speed will react to the target speed over time, and then that's how the posted speeds could evolve.
My other question is, you only really have one classification for most of the area west of I-95. Don't you think that you need some kind of distinction between the various communities that may be extremely different?
Well, and actually, we have had a lot of discussions. We think about the places that are like Pahokee, for instance. We've actually had many discussions about Canal Point as a really good example in terms of, is that really a rural town or is it suburban? And so that you are right. I think that when you have communities where there may be intersecting streets, but it still really is a rural or natural environment, that context is appropriate. But when you get to those, particularly a great example is in the Glades communities, that we do respect the difference. If you go look at the maps, you'll see that there are urban areas throughout the Glades region, according to the context classification, if that's kind of what you're getting at.
I think, and also, Dan, in the area, let's say west of 95, a lot of the state highway system corridors have C4 urban general characteristics due to things such as setbacks, block lengths, and street structure. So we do have a large part of the county that is C4 along the state highway system, even if it's C3R in the residential communities in that area. We do have a lot of C3C and C3R, meaning C3 commercial and C3 residential along the 441 corridor, the Southern Boulevard corridor, maybe west of State Road 7 as well. So there's a pretty good mix of C4 and C3, I think, in most parts of Palm Beach County, including some places that we found that are kind of C4 disguised as C3 as it relates specifically to the context along the state highway system corridor.
You have a map showing those different classifications?
Yes, on the modal viewer, one of the layers that you can look at is the system-wide provisional context classification, which provides the initial starting point for the assessment. And as was mentioned, a project level context classification includes a more rigorous analysis that will make the final determination on what the design team will use for context classification during the process. But a system-wide map at a provisional level is available on the modal viewer.
And that is in the second to last slide in your agenda packet.
Thank you.
Marjorie, do we have any other comments, questions?
No, Madam Chair.
I have one question. I have not looked at the map yet, but what input has been received from municipalities regarding classifications of roadways, and what if a city disagrees?
So it's what we found. This has been we're into our 4th year now, I believe, of the context classification application, and we found it's a really great dialogue starter and continuer with between FDOT and local agencies. One thing that the system-wide approach that Stuart mentioned does is it does help put some data behind the context classification across the district and really across the state, so that there's a little bit of objectiveness brought in, but then there is always engineering judgment is always really important. And so I think we have had very few jurisdictions really question or say we think something is different, and usually those have, when that's happened, we've had some really good dialogue. And I think that in general we've found a way to explain and help folks understand what we're doing with context classification. And often it really is not just an FDOT project that people are concerned about. It's just thinking about how the level of urbanity that they're planning for and contemplating and both aspiring to, and then also what's really coming in the pipeline in the next 20 years. We're designing roadways for a 20 to 30 year lifespan. So that's, again, I don't think we've had any places where anyone has said, boy, we disagree and we want to fight you about it, but it's been great to have these kind of dialogues that really, it's a great tool to help people see how land use and transportation really interact on both public and private realms.
Okay, thank you.
Well, this is Lois Bush, just to chime in a little bit. One of those calls was with the city of Hollywood and their Young Circle. And we had identified that as a C5 urban center, and city staff said, well, according to our documents and so forth and aspirations, it's a C6. And the bottom line was, when we explained how C5 is applied across a district, as opposed to jurisdiction by jurisdiction, keeping in mind there are over 80 local jurisdictions in District 4, there was an understanding. It doesn't mean the city's wrong or FDOT's wrong. Just in cases need to do crosswalks to have a mutual understanding. So it's, and one other thing to mention, when we do existing and future condition, when we do preliminary or provisional system-wide context classification, and when we look to future condition, we tie that to the modeling done by your Palm Beach TPA. Where have they put future employment and housing population in the model? So we start there. Again, we have multiple jurisdictions, and we're trying to link what we're doing with what the TPO does in terms of planning long-term and so forth. But it's all good discussion and really focusing on context users and so forth.
Okay, great. Thanks for that explanation. The last items are administrative items. And they're items 4A through C. And if there's no staff presentation unless requested by a committee member, or are there any public comments on these items?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. So the main item is really, we have a June 3rd, our next meeting is June 3rd next month. So I want to thank you, everybody. We're doing pretty good, I think. Thanks for your patience. And if there's nothing else, can we call this meeting adjourned? All right, thanks a lot. See you next month.